In this video, I'm going to show you how I make my school dinners meat pie. And you might think to yourself, school dinners meat pie? But I'm talking about school dinners over 50 years ago. And we used to be served this meat pie in a square portion that was thick with minced beef that had been cooked low and slow. And that's how I like to do this one. It's a dead easy recipe, but the whole family love it. But I'm just going to pick out the pertinent bits, the bits to get right. And anyway, let's get on. So start by prepping all your veg and cut it all the same size. So you've got onion, potatoes, celery, carrot. Start by frying the onion and the bacon. When that's been going about 10 minutes, then add your potatoes, your carrots and your celery and give it a really good stir. And then I'm shoving a few dried herbs in there and some seasoning. And then in a frying pan, heat up the pan, don't put any fat in it, and fry your minced beef in small batches so that it gets a brown crust on it like that. If you try and do it in big amounts, it'll boil rather than fry. It takes about probably 5 or 6 goes. And then when you've got all that in your casserole pan, you're going to deglaze that pan by pouring in the red wine, and that let that boil and it'll take all those lovely solids off the bottom of the pan. And then into your casserole, I've got flour, I've got sugar, I've got some HP sauce, and then I pour in that hot wine and all the residue from the pan in with the stock, give it a good stir, and that will cook for 5 hours. And then what you want is a really thick consistency like this. And I like to also crumble a couple of OXO cubes in there. I don't think I've put those in the recipe, but they just give you a little bit more flavour and a darker colour. And then leave that to go completely cold. I like to actually make it the day before, set it to one side, and then we start to make the pastry. And for the pastry, I'm basically putting the flour and the fat in the bowl of my food processor, giving it a good blitz. Now, if you don't want to use lard and want to use all butter, that's absolutely fine. But for a savoury pastry, I like half lard and half butter. Blitz that. Pour in the measured amount of liquid and leave it going in the food processor until it comes together to form a dough. And then divide it into manageable pieces, pop it in a bag and chill. Now this filling was made the day before, and look how thick and chunky it is the next day. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to add the chopped parsley and the grated cheese, give it a really good stir, and then start to assemble the pie. So I'm rolling out as near as I can to a square, and then so that I don't put my fingers through the bottom of this square tin, I'm actually laying the pastry on the loose bottom, and then I'll just fold the pastry to the top and the bottom and then gently just lay that into the loose bottom tin, and it just helps me then to mould it into the corners without putting my fingers through the base, because obviously you don't want any leaking juices from this pie. And then I'm just carefully moulding it round the sides, getting it down into the corners. Don't be frightened to patch it up if you get any holes or any cracks or any creases anywhere. It's not going to be a problem. Just do a little bit of patching with some leftover spare pastry. And then once you've got your pastry nicely fitted into the 4 corners of your tin, then you can trim the edges and then fill it right to the top with this cold, really thick filling. So then just dampen the edges of the pastry, lay over your pastry lid, and just nip the two together, prick the top, you'll need some air holes in it, and then I like to crimp the edge of my pastry pies. Everybody has their own style for doing that. And then you can either chill it before you put it in the oven or pop them in the freezer. But if you're going to freeze them, they want an egg wash before freezing. And whether you go fancy like this or plain, don't forget they taste exactly the same.